Hello and welcome. It really feels like our world is getting faster and more complicated by the day. So today, we're going to dive into what this whole age of uncertainty is doing to our minds and, maybe more importantly, how we can learn to adapt. Let's get right to it. So let's start with just one number that really tells a story: 25%. According to the World Health Organization, that's the global jump in anxiety and depression since the pandemic began. And look, this isn't just some abstract statistic. It's a huge signal that something fundamental has shifted in our collective mental health. It's like the psychological footprint of our world right now.
So that really brings up two massive questions, right? First, why does everything feel so overwhelming? And second, how is our brain, this incredible organ that evolved for a much simpler time, supposed to handle all this constant change? The answers, it turns out, are right where these huge global events meet our own internal wiring.
Okay, first up, our world, our worry. We're going to break down what researchers actually mean when they talk about the age of uncertainty. This isn't just a vague feeling, it's about real, overlapping crises and how they're directly affecting us psychologically.
So what is actually going on inside our heads when we're facing all this unpredictability? To figure that out, we've got to look at the science of stress and basically uncover our brain's very own internal security system.
The core idea here is something called cognitive appraisal. Now that sounds complicated, but it's a theory from two psychologists, Lazarus and Folkman, and it's actually super simple. It basically says that our emotional reaction isn't about the thing that happens, it's about how our mind interprets that thing in two very quick steps.
I want you to think of it like a security system in your brain that's always asking two key questions. First, it asks, is this a threat? That's what they call primary appraisal. Then, almost at the exact same time, it asks, okay, can I handle it? And that's secondary appraisal. Now here's the crucial part. Uncertainty is what happens when our brain can't get a clear yes or no to those questions. It gets stuck on maybe, and that just leaves our internal alarm bells ringing and ringing and ringing.
Now, to really see how this plays out on a massive scale, the research zooms in on India. Why India? Well, the country's experience kind of mirrors and even magnifies these global challenges, which makes it a really powerful case study for a nation under immense pressure.
And the numbers, wow, they're pretty stark. India's National Mental Health Survey found that about 14% of the entire adult population has a diagnosable mental health disorder. I mean, think about that. That's 1 in every 7 people. It's a really clear sign of the intense psychological pressure we're talking about.
And this pressure isn't spread out evenly. The data shows this really big gap between young people in the cities versus those in rural areas. It seems that city life, with all the high-stakes competition and just being plugged in 24/7, is taking a much heavier toll. We're seeing way higher levels of perceived stress there.
And this is the toughest statistic to talk about. Over 13,000 students a year. It's just not a number. Each one is a tragedy, and it's a heartbreaking reflection of the intense academic and social pressures that have just been ramping up over the last decade. It really puts a human face on what overwhelming uncertainty can lead to. But the story absolutely does not end there. In fact, this is where we pivot. We're going to go from the problem to the solutions, because we're going to look at how India is forging this really unique path forward by blending its ancient cultural strengths with some very modern policies.
So to really get this approach, you can think about two different ways of coping. On one hand, you've got the Western model, which so often focuses on the individual, personal grit, changing your own thoughts. But on the other hand, the Indian cultural context provides what researchers call collectivist buffering, this idea of drawing strength from these deep-rooted systems of family, faith, and your community.
And look, these are not just some quaint traditions. They are powerful, evidence-based tools for building resilience. In fact, research from India's top mental health institute shows that doing things like yoga, mindfulness, and even community service can cut down on perceived stress by an incredible 27%. These are real, proactive strategies for dealing with uncertainty.
What's so interesting is that India is now layering modern, tech-based solutions right on top of these traditional strengths. You've got apps, helplines, policy changes, and this hybrid model is so powerful because it doesn't make you choose between the individual and the community. It's using technology and policy to make both traditional support and modern care easier for everyone to access.
So, what's the big takeaway here? What can we all learn from this?
Well, we're zooming back out now to see how this kind of crisis can actually become a catalyst and how it might offer a blueprint for building resilience that could really be applied anywhere in the world.
And if you remember one thing, let it be this. For way too long, we have treated resilience like it's some kind of individual burden, like it's all on you. But the evidence is crystal clear. Real, lasting resilience is a collective capacity. It's something we build together into our communities, our schools, and our policies.
The research boils all this down into 3 really actionable pillars. First, there's cognitive flexibility, basically training our minds to see possibility where we used to just see a threat. Second, emotional intelligence, getting better at understanding and managing our own emotions. And third, social connectedness, intentionally building and leaning on our support networks. These 3 things, together, they form the foundation of a resilient mind in a very uncertain world.
We'll end on this one quote from the research that just sums it all up perfectly. If uncertainty defines the era, resilience must define the response. The world might not be getting any less uncertain, that's for sure, but our ability to navigate it together, that is something we actually have the power to change. So the real question is, how will each of us play a part in building that collective response?